Minister is part of the trade negotiations that are going on. What you're seeing on your screens at the moment is parleys, hectic negotiations as India and the European Union will announce a long-awaited free trade agreement. EU leaders are currently at the Defence Ministry through these fresh visuals coming in. Hectic parleys ongoing as India and the European Union will announce a long-awaited free trade agreement. And as I mentioned, it is being called the mother of all deals. This is being concluded after nearly 2 decades. This agreement is expected to include tariff cuts on nearly 90% of goods, marking a major breakthrough in bilateral trade. In fact, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had said that Europe and India are working closely together, adding that the deal will take India-EU ties to new heights and that both sides are committed to shaping a new global order. Hectic parleys going on. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is addressing the gathering there as EU leaders are present. In fact, our Prime Minister as well, he had welcomed the EU leadership and said he was privileged to host the EU chief and the President of the European Council. Now, EU leaders are currently at the Defence Ministry this morning and fresh visuals have just come in. Aditya Raj Kaul tracking the latest for us. He joins us with further details on the hectic negotiations that are ongoing at the Defence Ministry this morning. Aditya, fresh visuals coming in of Rajnath Singh and EU leaders as they prep to announce a long-awaited free trade agreement, which is being called the mother of all deals. Take us through the top issues that were discussed at the Defence Ministry this morning in August Company.
Well, yes, it's a historic day in the relationship between India and the European Union. Almost 2 decades-long negotiations and conversations around the FTA. And now these fresh visuals coming from the national capital, New Delhi, where Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is meeting the top leadership of the EU. The President of the EU Council as well as the EU Commission are meeting Rajnath Singh, the Defence Minister of India. Because remember, it's not just the FTA. There is an agreement on defence and security.
We've got Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's comments coming in. Let's just listen in.
The shared principle of democracy, multilateralism, and the rule of law support India's growing partnership with the European Union. Together we seek to translate these shared values into practical cooperation for global security, sustainable growth, and inclusive prosperity. Actually, the signing of the security and the defense partnership between India and the European Union is a reflection of established trust in action. And it brings us together in an increasingly complex global environment. I hope the increased momentum of India-EU partnership in economic, defense, and people-to-people connect will bring the two ancient civilizations much closer. I continue now. I request to have opening.
Thank you very much for welcoming us, and really yesterday participating at the Republic Day was quite an experience. So thank you for that as well, Your Excellency. I mean, it was so great to see, and I was so proud to see that also our operations were part of this parade, and I think it shows how we have been able to work together. Like you say, the signing of the Security and Defence Partnership is really a milestone, and we can build on that. There is so much more, like you said, Your Excellency, that we can work together on the multilateral fora, but also bilaterally to develop the defence cooperation further. So I really look forward to our discussions today and further cooperation in the future.
Secretary, first of all, we register from the Indian Ocean region and the regional security scan.
Yes.
Excellency, thank you for your kind words. India stands for free, open, prosperous, and the rule of Indo-Pacific. And we support the freedom of navigation and the and we see
Well, this is being called the mother of all deals. Strategically, we'll break down for you why it matters beyond economics. Aditya Raj Kaul is still with us at the moment, decoding the latest. Aditya, break down for our viewers what's happened this morning at the Defence Ministry. Also, what finally unlocked this deal now? Geopolitics, economics, or pressure from global trade disruptions spearheaded by the US President Donald Trump?
Well, certainly the last trigger has been the Donald Trump's global tariff policy that has led to the closeness and pushing both India and EU together. But certainly these dialogues and conversations and negotiations were underway over the last 2 decades, and that has led to a pragmatic push towards this historic day today in New Delhi, where, of course, the day's proceedings have begun. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh meeting the top EU leadership. Of course, the EU leadership will be going to the Rajghat as a symbolic formality to pay tributes to the father of the nation. And then the crucial brass tacks, which is, of course, at Hyderabad House, the big handshake between the EU leadership and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The summit-level talks will begin. And sometime afternoon, between 12 and 1:30, we'll see the press statements between the two leaders, where the announcement of the FTA is expected and the signing of the agreement will also take place. Thereafter, we'll see a business summit also at the Bharat Mandapam, where the leadership of the European Union and the Indian Prime Minister could also address the business leaders from both India and Germany. So it's clearly a historic day of a FTA between these nations, which could trigger the possibility of a positive stability, not just between India and EU, but globally.
Aditya, we'll continue to track all the finer developments with you. Thanks so much. This deal covers nearly 90% of traded goods. But how does this deal fit into India's broader strategy? Mahima breaks down the details for us.
India and the EU has announced conclusion of FTA negotiations. This will happen on 27th of Jan. So it's a crucial day that we'll be watching out for this development. The pact is nearing its finishing line after 18 years, and these talks started in 2007. Piyush Goyal has termed this FTA as the mother of all deals. This, probably will look forward to eliminate import duties of over 90% goods that are traded between EU as well as India. In terms of what the expectations are, well, India is looking at a zero-duty market for sectors such as textiles, leather, footwear, handlooms, processed foods, etc. EU is seeking greater access to Indian markets for auto exports, wine, as well as emerging high-tech manufacturing sectors. Sensitive sectors such as agriculture and dairy are kept out of the deal. And overall, EU has also been protective of its beef, sugar, as well as rice markets. In terms of the EU and India trades details so far in how FY25 has fared, EU markets account for about 17% of India's total exports. Exports to India constitute 9% of its total overseas shipment as well. India-EU bilateral trade was at USD $136 billion in 2024 and 2025, of which exports were $75 billion and imports were $60 billion. The services trade in 2024 stood at around $83 billion. In terms of what sectors, India is a major exporter to EU. That includes counters like petroleum, electronics, textiles, machinery, organic chemicals, iron and steel, gems and jewelry, pharma, auto parts, footwear and coffee. On the flip side, you have major imports that we do from EU, include counters like machinery, computer, electronics, aircraft, medical devices, scientific instruments, gems and jewelry, organic chemicals as well as plastics. Lastly, in terms of where FDI flows stand, India cumulative FDI flows from April 2000 to September 24 stood at $117.4 billion, and FDI from EU represented over 16.5% of the cumulative amount of FDI equity inflows from all countries.
Breaking news we're tracking at the moment. Just as India and the European Union prepare to formally unveil what's being called the mother of all trade deals, a sharp warning has come in from Washington now. The United States has accused Europe of financing a war against itself. The US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that while Europe has phased out direct energy ties with Russia, it is indirectly funding the Russia-Ukraine war by buying Russian crude refined in India, even as Washington itself has imposed tariffs on New Delhi. These remarks are coming at a sensitive moment. Aditya Raj Kaul is here with me to discuss this further. Aditya, break down for us, why has the US chosen this moment to publicly flag Europe's energy trade with India?
Well, it's quite expected, isn't it? We were expecting a sharp reaction coming in from Washington, D.C. To what is being called a mother of all deals between India and European Union. This also comes at a time when European Union and Trump are in a diplomatic spat on the Greenland issue. and certainly sharp warnings coming in from several European nations against the policies of the Trump administration. So much so that at Davos, Trump had to take a sharp U-turn on the Greenland issue and say that a military strike or a military takeover will not happen and negotiations will continue. But today is that momentous occasion, a historic day when India and EU could ink that historic FTA that have been under works for over 2 decades. There has been a lot of negotiations, a lot of talks, a lot of angry reactions also coming in. But certainly now EU and India have come close. Perhaps we need to thank Donald Trump for his policies of the global tariffs that have been imposed not just against India but several other countries that have pushed India and EU together. I'm standing right now at the Hyderabad House where the big handshake will take place between the top leadership of the European Union and of course the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The EU leadership early this morning met Rajnath Singh, the Defence Minister of India. Thereafter they are going to the Rajghat, which is of course historic, important, symbolic gesture on part of the foreign delegates whenever they visit India. And thereafter the brass tacks of the entire visit, which is of course the summit level talks between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the EU leadership will take place right behind me at the Hyderabad House. Sometime afternoon between 12 and 1:30 we could see the joint statement between the leadership of EU and India where the historic announcement of the FTA could happen and the details of this would be given by them as well. At around 4 p.m. we could see Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Ministry spokesperson, Rajesh Agarwal, India's trade negotiator, and Vikram Misri, India's foreign ministry, come together and hold a press conference giving details of the historic FTA. But the top leadership of EU and India will also be holding a business meeting and they'll be addressing the business summit between India and Germany top CEOs and executives at the Bharat Mandapam. Right. So certainly US is watching this very, very closely, and now Donald Trump's key advisor and Secretary Bessent is warning of Europe funding its own war and going against its own promises and norms on this entire issue. Certainly, United States will not be happy with the India-EU trade deal when the India-US trade deal is still under works and there's no headway on it.